I woke to pounding that sounded like bones arguing with wood. 3 hits, a pause, then 2 more, measured, desperate, the kind of rhythm you hear in training videos and nightmares. The red digits on my bedside clock bled 2:07 a.m. across the ceiling. Wind pushed through the building's seams and made the radiator tick like an old heart. I lay there for a single stupid second, listening, my brain deciding whether this was a drunk neighbor or a door I was responsible for. The next volley shook the chain in its track. I was on my feet before my name finished forming in the dark. The holster on the nightstand was empty. I wasn't on duty, and I didn't keep a firearm chambered in my apartment because I knew how panic turned hands into strangers. But my training never slept. My body found the route. Bedroom to living room to door. Count the floorboards, avoid the one that creaks near the bookcase. Sweep the room with my eyes for anything out of place. Nothing was. Everything was. The pounding came again, and I heard a small sound braided into it. Something like a child's breath catching where it shouldn't. I kept my voice low and level. Identify. Mad, please. The voice shattered me and rebuilt me in the space of 2 syllables. I didn't need the peephole. I looked anyway because procedure was a prayer. Savannah's face swam into the fisheye, cheek split, left eye half closed and blooming the wrong color. Behind her, angled cockeyed against the frame, a wheelchair with one front caster twisted sideways like a sprained ankle. Chloe's hair hung in a dark rope over her cheek. Her small hand worried a chain at her throat, metal glinting under the fluorescent hall light. My fingers moved before my breath did. Deadbolt, latch, chain. The door opened on wind and bleach and the ruin of my sister. Savannah stumbled forward like the night had pushed her. I caught her by the shoulders. Heat burned through her sweatshirt, a fever raised by fear and whatever lay under it. "I've got you," I said, and my voice came out so calm it made my ribs ache. The wheelchair's caster jammed on the threshold with a squeal that made Chloe flinch hard enough to push a gasp through her teeth. I crouched and lifted the footplate with one hand, guiding the chair over the lip. Metal kissed wood. The chair rolled in. I closed the door and folded every lock back into place. Latch, deadbolt, chain. The hallway air, stale with cigarettes and mop water, bled away. Lemon cleaner and dust reclaimed the apartment. Chloe's eyes found mine. They were too big for 3 in the morning and 8 years old. The silver charm at her throat, a small star stamped into a round tag, caught the lamplight and flashed once like a signal mirror. "You're okay," I told her. "You're safe here." It wasn't a lie. It was a promise I intended to make true. I scanned Savannah. Left zygomatic swelling, lower lip laceration, shallow, clavicle discoloration in the shape of a thumb, defensive abrasions at the knuckles, a smear of something dark on her collar, grease or someone else's night. Her hands shook in small, stubborn tremors, the kind you see after impact when the body starts counting. "Sit," I said, and guided her to the couch. She folded herself into the corner like she'd been trying to make herself that small for hours. The couch sagged, offended by the weight of another bad night. I crossed to the kitchen, took a clean washcloth from the drawer, ran cold water until the pipes hissed, wrung the cloth until it dripped clear. The freezer door stuck, and I popped it with a flat palm. Ice cracked against its own cold. I wrapped cubes in the towel and felt their dumb, honest sting against my palm. "Who did this?" I asked when I came back. Required question. Obvious one. Sometimes the obvious question pries truth loose. Savannah's mouth tugged at the first word and abandoned it. She pressed the ice to her cheek and inhaled through her nose, thin and shaking. Her hair was braided crooked. Someone had grabbed it, then lost interest in neatness. The sweatshirt she wore was the one with the faded State Fair logo. The one she never wore to nice places, according to our mother. There was a footprint stamped ghost faint across the stomach. Men who kicked left prints, like signatures. She looked past me, toward the door, like the hallway was a mouth that might chew and spit more trouble our way. She started, and when her glance flicked to Chloe, the sentence snapped off like a thread. Bathroom's down the hall, I said, softer. Rinse, don't rub. I'll get antiseptic. And ibuprofen. She nodded as if relief had to be earned. When she stood, her body winced before gravity had a chance to touch it. She moved like bruises think. The bathroom light threw her shadow long and thinner than she was. The mirror caught her face and gave it back to her in pieces. The apartment reassembled itself around me while the faucet ran. The coffee table sat under 2 neat stacks of case notes and 1 guilty hill of unfolded laundry. Certificates on the far wall flashed in the lamplight, like eyes that already knew the story. Commendations, citations, the framed photo of my unit overseas, our faces younger and sunburned, and convinced we could hold any line if we stood on it together. Outside, the city was a black lake punctured by islands of orange streetlight. Somewhere, a siren tested its voice against the wind. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, an insect under glass. I didn't need to look to know it was trouble. I looked anyway. The name at the top of the screen found the old bruise behind my breastbone and pressed with 2 fingers. Patricia Cole. My mother wrote like a woman who knew her sentences were weapons and liked the way they felt in her hands. Don't save her. The 4 words lit the kitchen like a bad flare. I felt them in my back teeth. The second message hit before the first lost its echo. You always make things worse. This is family business. Stay out of it. The words filled the kitchen. They crawled into the corners like smoke. For a second, my hands forgot the ice and remembered the countertop. Smooth laminate, cheap apartment stone. The one surface in the room that had nothing to say about blood or duty or daughters. Water quieted in the bathroom. The towel bar pinged as if it had let go of something too heavy. In the living room, Chloe's breathing sawed in careful pulls, the way lungs do when the ribs have opinions. Her small hands rubbed the silver charm back and forth. The chain made a tiny music you only hear if you have a soldier's ears or a child's. Another text burned up from the bottom, clean as a blade. You want to help? Don't answer the door next time. There are sentences that rewire you even as you hate them. I had known for years that my mother valued the way we looked over the way we lived. I had never seen her write it in neon at 2:13 a.m. and send it to me like a command. I went into the bathroom and knocked twice on the cracked paint. It's me, I said. Open up. The door eased back on its hinges. Savannah's eye floating in the narrow gap looked like something shipwrecked. Is she okay? She asked, and the question had too much history in it for 3 words. She's with me, I said, so yes. I handed her the ibuprofen and the antiseptic spray. Small sips of water. Don't tilt your head back. Pressure, not force, instructions steadied me the way prayer steadies other people. We're going to the ER. You know why. She shut her eyes, nodding once like a confession. Behind her, the mirror caught the marks on her throat and translated them into geometry. A thumbprint, an arc, a smudge where the night had been careless. Back in the kitchen, my phone vibrated again. I didn't pick it up. I had memorized my mother's tone by the time I was 9. I could hear it without the screen. I put the ice in a fresh towel. I found a clean t-shirt and laid it on the arm of the couch. I lay a thin blanket across the cushions like warmth could undo the shape the night had carved out of my sister. Chloe watched me like I was someone building a bridge over water she didn't trust. "Aunt Maddie," she whispered, one hand still on the star. "Can I sit on the couch, not the chair?" "Just for a little." "Deal," I said, and squatted in front of her. I looked over her torso for pain lines, the little flinches kids try to hide from you. The truth their bodies tell even when they've been taught not to make noise. "Transfers like we practiced at Thanksgiving, yeah?" She nodded. I braced her knees with mine, slid a hand under her shoulder blades, the other under her thighs, and lifted on her breath. She was light in a way that spoke of too many skipped meals on heavy nights. The wheelchair creaked, filing a complaint we ignored. I pivoted and sat her on the couch beside Savannah's folded blanket. "There," I said, and tucked the throw over her knees. "You get couch privileges when you open doors for your aunt at 2 in the morning." A ghost of a smile. "It was Mom," she said, "because kids correct everything. I can't reach the top chain." "Then you get couch privileges for enduring my jokes." I straightened the throw and made a promise to the part of myself that kept lists. We would get a ramp for the threshold and a chain extender. We would fix what a door had to say to a child. "Mad?" Savannah called. The bathroom door opened wider and she emerged, ice pressed to her cheek, breath a little cleaner. Her eyes pinballed from me to Chloe, to the door, to the silent phone, to my face again, like she was assessing a perimeter she used to live inside without names. My mother's phone call came then. Not a text, a ring with the old tone she insisted I keep because family should sound like family when it calls. The screen crawled toward me across the counter, buzzing a slow insect pattern. I thumbed it green and didn't give her my name. "What do you think you're doing?" Patricia's voice arrived cool and even, the practiced cadence of a woman who made her beliefs sound like etiquette. "Treating injuries," I said. "Securing safety. Calling an ambulance." "You will not," she said, and in the space between those words lay 34 years of rules. "If you escalate, he'll lose his job. He'll tell people things about Savannah, about you, the church." "Save your choir," I said. "2 things, Mom. 1. You don't get to use the word escalate when I'm the one staring at your daughter's face. 2. If you text me, "Don't save her," again, that message moves from my phone to a folder marked evidence. Silence. The kind that opens like a crack and shows you a glimpse of the basement that's always been under your family house. "You always make things worse," she said at last, and I could hear dishes in the background, her hand moving a sponge over a clean plate to give her something to do with herself besides admit what she'd become. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the counter. Sav and Chloe didn't need to hear it, but I needed to hear it standing 6 feet away, looking at them. Distance made a truth something you could triangulate. "If you call anyone," she said, voice smoothing to its favorite register, "I won't forgive you." I almost laughed. Forgiveness had been the leash she kept for 3 decades. She tugged it when she wanted us to heal. It worked better when we were girls and the leash looked like love. As adults, you see the clasp and understand who it was designed to restrain. "This isn't about your forgiveness," I said. It's about my threshold, and the fact that your granddaughter's chair squeals on the right brake because the man you defend hasn't fixed it in months. She inhaled sharply, the way people do when words land on a part of them that bruises easy. You will ruin this family, she said. You will ruin us. I looked at Savannah's collarbone and the thumbprint shaped in purple. I looked at the faint shoe tread on her sweatshirt. I looked at Chloe's small hand on the silver star and the way the metal trembled. It's already ruined, I said. I'm just turning on the lights. I hung up. The phone went dark like a mouth closing around a lie. Ambulance, I said to Savannah, because questions sometimes make breathing harder. We're not driving ourselves because roommates and husbands get strange ideas when the car leaves, and we want the record to show you came in on a call. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, she said. It was the reflex spoken by every woman who has learned to file her injuries under inconvenience. You're not, I said. Trouble already lives here. We're inviting someone who knows how to write it down. She nodded, and that nod cut through the last of my hesitation. I dialed 911. The operator's voice was steady in a way that matched mine. I gave the address. I gave the injuries. I used the words I had avoided for years because they turned doors into courtrooms. Domestic assault, minor present, visible bruising, possible strangulation markers. The operator asked if the assailant was on site. Negative, I said, but he has keys to a place 2 doors down from the victim's apartment. And he has a temper that thinks it can walk through wood. Units en route, she said. Ma'am, are you in a safe place? I looked around my apartment. The couch and the coffee table and the certificates and the laundry and the lamp. The 2 women who were both my blood and my responsibility. The phone that lay dark in a way that didn't scare me anymore. I am now, I said. The wind shouldered the window. The building answered with a small shudder. It had survived worse weather, and so had I. I knelt and retied Chloe's sneaker that had come undone during the transfer. The laces were gray where they should have been white. I made another list: new shoes, ramp, chain extender, appointment calendar that belonged to us and not to other people's moods. Is Grandma mad? Chloe asked, gaze tilted at me with the terrifying clarity children bring to adult cowardice. She's very concerned about the wrong things, I said. Some adults never learn the right things. That's not your job. What's my job? She said. Hold on to that star, I said, tapping the charm with a knuckle. And when people tell you to be quiet about hurt, you tell them your aunt taught you to speak louder. The sirens arrived small and then bigger, turning corners until they were downstairs and bright in the hallway glass. Boots spoke the language of speed out in the corridor. Knuckles kissed my door, measured but strong. EMS, a voice called. Police. I unlocked the chain. The door opened onto uniforms and competence. The apartment filled with the smell of cold air and nylon and professionalism. A paramedic's penlight found Savannah's pupils, and the night turned into notes. A police officer's clipboard turned my words into a report number that would follow us into rooms where authority lived. Who called? The officer asked, pen raised. I did, I said. I'm Captain Madison Cole, military police. His eyebrows lifted a millimeter in a quiet acknowledgement that made the floor feel steadier. Then you know how this goes, he said. I do, I said, and looked over at Savannah. This time, we actually do it. The officer's eyes flicked to the hallway, as if weighing whether some version of Kyle might arrive out of it. We'll post a unit at the end of the corridor while we transport, he said, already speaking into his shoulder mic. Thank you, I said. The paramedics worked in calm choreography. Vitals, questions, ice replaced with something sterile and properly cold. Chloe watched, mouth tight, eyes a kind of brave that makes you want to tear up and can't afford to. I squeezed her hand. She squeezed mine back, and the chain bit briefly into my finger. It hurt the way a vow does when it fits. When they wheeled Savannah toward the door, my phone buzzed one last time on the counter, as if the night wanted to offer me a closing argument. I didn't flip it. I didn't need to. I looked at the whole map of the room one more time, the busted chain logic of our family snapping under its own rust, the girl with a star at her throat, the wheelchair that squealed on the right brake, the stack of case files that suddenly had company, and the door that had become a threshold between what used to happen and what would happen next. I didn't feel heat. Heat is sloppy. Heat makes noise and mistakes, and the sort of mess that takes months to mop. What rose in me was winter clean. Angles, choices, lines I would not cross, and lines I would not let them cross again. My mother had said, "Don't save her." I stepped into the hall with my sister and my niece and the stretcher and the officers, and the night that still smelled like old cigarettes and salt. And I did exactly the opposite. Hospitals at night are the loneliest places in the world. The lights hum too loud, the linoleum shines too bright, and every hallway smells like someone else's emergency. I sat in a molded plastic chair at St. Luke's ER, my shoulders squared the way training taught me, but inside, the weight of old wounds pressed harder than the one on Savannah's cheek. Because this wasn't new. This night was only the latest link in a chain my mother had been forging around us since we were children. I was 12 when I learned what it meant to be the wrong daughter. It was a Sunday morning. I'd tucked a library book inside my hymnal, a dog-eared copy of Hatchet I couldn't put down. Patricia caught me, eyes slicing sharp as glass. She ripped the book from my hands in the middle of the sermon, slapped the cover shut so the whole row of church ladies turned to stare. "Shameful," she hissed. "Reading trash when God's word is right in front of you." 2 pews over, Savannah was whispering to a boy, giggling behind her hair. Patricia only smiled, stroked her arm, and told the ladies, "My younger one's such a charmer." That was the first wound. Favoritism disguised as love. By 16, I had stopped arguing. Arguing just gave her ammunition. I learned to keep my face blank, my tone even, my back straight. If Savannah came home with a failing grade, Patricia blamed the teacher. If I brought home an A-, Patricia asked why it wasn't higher. When Savannah snuck out and got caught with liquor, Patricia covered for her. When I stayed late at the library, Patricia accused me of trying to embarrass the family by acting smarter than everyone else. Every rule bent in Savannah's favor, and every punishment found its way to me. The pattern followed us into adulthood. I still remember Savannah's wedding. Cheap reception hall, paper streamers, Kyle's smile too wide for his face. I stood at the back with a champagne glass in my hand and dread in my chest. I saw the way he leaned too close, the way his hand tightened on her wrist when she tried to step away. "Mom," I whispered to Patricia, voice steady, factual. "He's not safe. He's already drinking too much. He's lying about his work." She never even turned her head, just smiled at the guests, nails digging crescent moons into my arm. "Don't ruin this for her," she said through her teeth. don't ruin this for me. That was her mantra. Not help your sister, not protect the family. Always, don't ruin this for me. That wound cut deeper than any bruise Kyle could leave, because Patricia wasn't blind. She saw exactly what he was. And she chose silence. Then came Chloe. The day my niece was born, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would change. When I saw her tiny fists and the way she fought to breathe, I promised myself I would never let her fight alone. But Patricia looked at her like she was a problem to manage. A wheelchair wasn't an aid in my mother's eyes. It was an embarrassment. She cooed fake concern when neighbors asked, then turned sharp at home. Don't make her disability the center of attention. People don't need to know everything. She ignored the medical bills. She ignored the therapy needs. But she never ignored the disability checks. That money came in like clockwork, and somehow it never went where it was meant to. New jewelry sparkled on Patricia's neck. Kyle drove a newer truck. Meanwhile, Savannah cut Chloe's pills in half to stretch prescriptions, and I bought sneakers for her when the school nurse called. And every time I raised my voice, Patricia clipped it with the same blade. Stop exaggerating. You always make things worse. Don't ruin this family. The ER waiting room clock blinked 3:46 a.m. I sat with those words echoing in my skull, watching my sister cradle her child's hand, her knuckles raw, her eyes red. Every swallowed warning, every slap of favoritism, every silenced protest, they were all here, made flesh in her bruises. Patricia's text had only put it in writing, "Don't save her." But I couldn't unsee the truth anymore. I wasn't 12 with a book under my hymnal. I wasn't 16 swallowing rage. I wasn't the sister told to stand down at a wedding where the groom's smile already looked like a weapon. I was Captain Madison Cole, and this time I would not let my mother's silence be the last word. The ER waiting room at 4 a.m. was half empty, but it felt like the whole world was watching us. Every cough, every shuffle of shoes against linoleum echoed louder than it should. Savannah sat 2 chairs away from me, head bent, ice pack melting into her sweatshirt. Chloe was curled against her side, her necklace clutched in one small fist, like a medal she'd won just for surviving the night. A nurse called Savannah's name. She flinched before standing, as if even help sounded like a threat. I rose with her, steady, but she shook her head. Just let me do it. Her voice broke on the last word. She wasn't asking, she was pleading. I sat back down, but my eyes followed her through the double doors until they swallowed her. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. The screen lit up. Patricia Cole. I almost didn't open it. Almost. Patricia. You're overreacting. Savannah will just make herself look worse. Stay out of it. A second message snapped into place. Patricia. Don't involve the police. If you do, you'll regret it. My jaw locked. I set the phone on the plastic chair beside me, face down, and stared at the blank TV mounted on the wall. I tried to slow my breathing the way the army had drilled into me. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4. But the air came in hot and shallow anyway. This wasn't just another bad night. This wasn't just bruises. This was my mother, again, trying to weaponize silence. And for the first time, I wasn't a child forced to obey. I opened my phone, created a new folder, and titled it Case File, Savannah and Chloe. The first entry, photos. I scrolled back through my camera roll, every angle of Savannah's injuries I'd taken before we left the apartment. Bruises, fingerprints, swollen eye. I uploaded them. The second entry, Patricia's texts. Don't save her. Don't involve the police. You'll regret it. Each one, screenshotted, timestamped, backed up to cloud storage. The third entry, a photo of Chloe's prescription bottles, each label with dates that didn't match the refill schedule I knew by heart. Evidence of neglect. I felt something cold and sharp click into place inside me. I wasn't just her sister anymore. I was an investigator. And this was no longer family business. This was a case. Savannah returned 30 minutes later, moving stiffly, a bandage under her sleeve. Chloe looked up at her like she was gauging whether to exhale. Savannah touched her daughter's cheek with a trembling hand, then glanced at me. Did you call Mom back? No, I said flatly. She sank into the chair beside me, relief tangled with fear. She'll never forgive us for this. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, eyes on hers. Sav, listen to me. Forgiveness isn't the currency here. Safety is. Evidence is. The truth is. Her lips parted as if to argue, then closed. A tear slid down her cheek, quiet and angry. The kind that comes after years of swallowing worse. That was the moment, the breaking point. Patricia had ordered me to stay silent, to not save her. But instead, I had opened a case file, called in help, and begun building the one thing my mother feared more than scandal, a paper trail that couldn't be erased. I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was rewriting it. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the next move was mine. Morning bled into my apartment like a stranger who hadn't been invited. The blinds cut pale stripes across the living room, over Savannah asleep on the couch, Chloe curled into her side, her wheelchair parked close enough to touch. The silence was fragile, but it was the first I'd heard in years that didn't feel like it belonged to Patricia. I brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon upright and cleared the dining table. Case notes, pens, manila folders, my service laptop. No family photographs, no distractions. This was no longer just my kitchen. It was a command post. I had been trained to break down a battlefield into objectives. This battlefield wasn't overseas, it was the courtroom, and if I wanted to win, I needed to prepare as if lives depended on it. Because they did. Step 1. Documentation. I pulled the SD card from my phone and slotted it into the laptop. The photos filled the screen. Savannah's bruised face, her collarbone stamped with the outline of a thumb, the faint shoe tread across her sweatshirt. I cataloged each image, named and timestamped, backed them up to cloud storage and a flash drive. Redundancy was survival. Next, I opened the text messages from Patricia. Don't save her. Don't involve the police. You'll regret it. I printed them out, black ink on white paper, then scanned the hard copies into PDF. My mother's words had become exhibits. Step 2. Witnesses. I drove to Savannah's apartment complex, uniform jacket zipped high to hide the fact that my hands wouldn't stop clenching. The neighbors were hesitant. Nobody wants to get dragged into another family's storm. But 2 agreed to talk. Mrs. Franklin, a retired nurse across the hall, swore she'd heard screaming and a thud that shook her wall. I called 911 once before, she admitted, but the cops just shrugged when Savannah wouldn't file a report. This time, I'll sign whatever you need. The second was a college kid, Levi, who lived 1 floor down. He had a shaky phone recording of Kyle's voice booming through the stairwell, Savannah crying out, and then silence. He handed me the file like it was contraband. I didn't know what to do with it, he said, but she didn't deserve that. I thanked him, my voice tight. Their statements went into the folder. Step 3. Follow the money. That night, while Savannah slept, I sat at the table, combing through bank statements she'd brought in a shoebox. Numbers never lie. Chloe's disability checks, meant for wheelchairs, therapies, and medications, were being siphoned. Transfers from Savannah's account to one jointly owned by Kyle and Patricia. From there, withdrawals at casinos, jewelry stores, a down payment on a car titled under my mother's name. My blood went cold. This wasn't just neglect. It was exploitation, calculated and deliberate. I highlighted the transactions, made charts, and built a timeline. When I leaned back, the pattern was as clear as a set of tire tracks. Step 4. Allies. I met Staff Sergeant Hill at the base cafeteria, the scent of burnt eggs and coffee grounds in the air. I slid the folder across to him. He flipped through the evidence, whistling low. "You're not pulling punches," he said. "I don't have that luxury," I replied. He nodded. "Paperwork wins wars like this. Keep your chain of custody tight, and get a lawyer who can swing this like a hammer." I already knew who. I called Deborah Langley, a defense attorney whose reputation for dismantling liars was practically folklore in the Midwest. When she answered, her tone was clipped, businesslike. I laid it all out: domestic violence, fraud, Patricia's enabling. There was a pause, and then her voice sharpened. "Bring me everything. If even half of this holds up, we won't just win. We'll expose them." Step 5. Protection. I drove downtown to the courthouse, the air biting cold, the clerk's office lit by buzzing fluorescents. Filing for an emergency protective order felt like walking into fire. The clerk looked twice at the evidence, her expression caught between disbelief and pity. "Against your own mother?" she asked. "Against anyone who puts my sister and niece in danger," I said. The order went through. Kyle was barred from contact until the hearing. Patricia, too. By the time I got home, the folders were thick, heavy with proof. Savannah sat at the counter, watching me with wide, tired eyes. Chloe wheeled up beside her, the silver star necklace catching the lamplight. "You really think this will work?" Savannah asked, her voice cracked, fragile. I looked down at the arsenal spread across the table. Photos, texts, bank records, sworn statements, weapons sharper than any knife. "Yes," I said. My voice was iron. "Because this time, we're not fighting them in shadows. We're dragging them into the light." Savannah's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She reached for Chloe's hand instead, their fingers lacing. And in that small act, I saw it. The first spark of belief. The courthouse smelled of varnished wood and paper older than the walls. Morning light spilled through tall windows, cutting the hearing room into rectangles of dust and judgment. I had stood in courts before, military hearings, disciplinary reviews, but never one where the enemy wore my mother's face. Savannah sat beside me, trembling so hard I could feel it through the bench. Chloe's wheelchair was parked in the front row, silver necklace clutched tight in her hand. I kept my posture military straight, even though inside, my heart pounded like it was marching to war. Across the aisle sat Patricia. Perfect hair, pearl necklace, spine rigid as marble. Beside her, Kyle, his knee bouncing, jaw clenched, trying to look calm but vibrating with barely caged rage. When the judge entered, the bailiff called the room to order. Silence fell, heavy as a hammer. Deborah Langley rose first. She carried my folders the way a soldier carries a weapon, balanced, deliberate, ready. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clean and sharp, "this is not merely a family dispute. This is a case of systematic abuse and financial exploitation. We will prove that Mr. Merrick inflicted violence on his wife Savannah with their child present, and that Patricia Cole, Savannah's own mother, enabled and profited from this abuse. We seek protective orders and a transfer of custody for Chloe into the care of Captain Madison Cole." The words hit Patricia like a slap. She lifted her chin, pretending it hadn't landed. The retired nurse, Mrs. Franklin, was first. She testified that she heard screaming and a heavy thud through her wall the night Savannah came to my door. "I've called 911 before," she said, voice steady. "But Savannah always withdrew her complaint. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet this time." Then Levi, the college student, played his recording on the court's monitor. Kyle's voice roared through the tinny speaker. Drunken, cruel. Savannah's sobs twisted the room. Then a silence so thick everyone knew what had happened next. Kyle's lawyer objected, calling it inconclusive. But the judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The damage was done. Next came the forensic accountant. He clicked through slides of bank statements, transfers, and receipts. "These deposits," he said, pointer tapping the screen, "are disability benefits designated for Chloe Merrick's medical care. You'll note they were rerouted into an account jointly owned by Mr. Merrick and Patricia Cole. From there, funds were withdrawn for personal expenses, casinos, jewelry, and, notably, a vehicle purchased in Patricia Cole's name." The air in the courtroom snapped. Patricia's face went pale, her pearl necklace suddenly looking more like a chain. Deborah called me to the stand. My boots felt heavier than any combat load I'd carried, but I walked steady. I swore the oath and sat, back straight, hands folded in front of me. "Captain Cole," Deborah said, "please describe the night of February 14th. I told them everything. The pounding at my door, Savannah's face, broken, Chloe in her chair, terrified. The texts from Patricia, "Don't save her. Don't involve the police. You'll regret it." Deborah entered the texts into evidence. The judge read them aloud. Each word landed like a gunshot in the silent room. Patricia's mask cracked then. A flicker of panic slipped through, quickly hidden behind her tight smile. "And, Captain," Deborah said, "what did you do with those messages?" "I preserved them," I said, "as evidence." Deborah waited until Kyle was on the stand. He tried to charm, tried to spin his fraud into misunderstandings. He spoke of stress, of hard times, of how he didn't mean for things to get out of hand. Then Deborah slid a folder across the bench. "Is this your signature on these VA disability claims?" Kyle froze. His lips parted, but no sound came. The judge lifted the document, eyes scanning. "Mr. Merrick, these claims state injuries and service records that do not exist. Do you deny submitting them?" Kyle stammered, tried to blame Savannah, tried to deflect to me. But Deborah pressed harder, showing transfers from those benefits into Patricia's account. "And Ms. Cole," Deborah turned, "you were complicit in this fraud, were you not? Your name is on the purchases. Your voice is on the voicemail instructing your daughter not to call the police." Then the recording played. Patricia's voice filled the courtroom, smooth and cold. "You know how this family survives. Don't call the police. We keep it quiet." The gallery gasped. Someone muttered, "My God." The judge's face hardened. The gavel cracked once. "Enough." The judge spoke with finality. Given the photographic evidence, witness testimony, financial records, and recordings, this court grants immediate protective orders against Mr. Merrick and Patricia Cole. Custody of Chloe Merrick is awarded temporarily to Captain Madison Cole, with a full review scheduled. Investigations into fraud and exploitation are referred to the District Attorney's Office. The gavel struck again. Patricia's face collapsed, colorless, brittle, stripped of its careful image. Kyle cursed under his breath, restrained by his attorney. Savannah broke, silent tears spilling down her cheeks. Chloe reached for me, her small hand gripping mine. The silver star necklace gleamed in the courtroom light, and for the first time, I felt what victory in a just war was supposed to feel like. Not triumph, not pride, but relief. Relief that the truth had finally spoken louder than silence. Sure. The day after the hearing, my apartment felt like a different country. The walls hadn't moved, the blinds hadn't shifted, but the air was lighter. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like something choking us. Savannah slept on the couch, her body curled around Chloe like a mother lion finally able to rest once the hyenas scattered. The child's wheelchair sat nearby, empty, a folded blanket over the armrest like a flag marking victory. The silver star necklace glinted against Chloe's chest as she dreamed. I sat at the kitchen table, the place where I had built the case. The folders were thinner now, copies handed to Deborah, originals filed with the court. The evidence that once felt like a burden was now protection, a shield we could stand behind. My phone buzzed. The name froze me for half a second. Patricia Cole. I opened the message. Patricia, you've destroyed this family. No one will forgive you for this. I read it twice, then deleted it. Her words didn't hold the power they once had. Forgiveness had always been her leash, but I wasn't on it anymore. Behind me, Chloe stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy with sleep, and she tugged at the necklace. "Aunt Maddie?" she whispered, voice thin but steady. "Does this mean we're safe now?" I knelt beside her, brushed hair from her forehead. "It means you're safer. And it means I won't stop fighting until you always are." She nodded with the solemn weight of a child who has already seen too much. Then she closed her hand around the star again, not in fear this time, but in claim. The ripple spread quickly. Kyle faced charges for fraud and domestic assault. His charm collapsed under cross-examination and evidence. His temper, once a weapon inside closed doors, became his undoing in the open air of the law. Patricia's name appeared in financial reports, her voicemail replayed in courtrooms and offices. Neighbors who once smiled politely in church now whispered when she passed. The reputation she had polished all her life bled out in public. For once, silence belonged to her. Savannah began the slow work of standing again, not just on bruised legs, but as a mother who could breathe without waiting for the next blow. Some nights she still woke crying, but the tears were different. They weren't fear, they were release. Chloe adjusted to life with us quickly. Her laughter returned in small bursts, brittle at first, then fuller. She painted stars on the margins of my case notes and taped them to the fridge, each one brighter than the last. I made lists: new sneakers, a ramp for the threshold, a chain extender for the door. Simple things. Things that made life easier instead of harder. For once, I had the freedom to plan forward instead of brace backward. For 34 years, Patricia had taught me family was something you suffered to protect an image. That blood mattered more than truth. That silence was love. But sitting there, with Savannah asleep and Chloe breathing easy, I understood the truth. Family isn't the people who tell you to endure hurt. It isn't the ones who silence you to keep their masks intact. It isn't the mother who texts, "Don't save her." Family is the ones who fight for you when everyone else tells them not to. Family is the sister who finally finds her courage. Family is the child who trusts you enough to hand you her fear. That was the family I chose, the family I would protect. And as I tucked the last folder into the drawer, I felt the silver star necklace press against my palm when Chloe reached for my hand. It glowed in the dim light like a small, steady promise. We were no longer the family Patricia built. We were something stronger, something finally safe.